and welcome back to the American Experiment podcast. My name is Grace Keating. As always, I am joined by Kathryn Hinderocker.
Hello.
And today we are so happy to have in studio with us Bill Walsh, Director of Communications.
Wow. I like how you say that.
Thank you. So glad to have you here.
Are you really, though? I feel like there's a little tension there.
As glad as we can be,
right.
yes.
You guys didn't see before the cameras rolled. But we're good. We're good.
We are introducing a new segment today. We're very excited about it. Kathryn, please tell us.
Well, I would like to start off by saying it's Bill's idea. So if it's
good,
it's great. It was our idea.
It was the podcast's, yes.
If it's bad, it was Bill's idea. It's called Stop the Tape. And what we're going to do, because Bill spent a lot of yesterday in the House Ways and Means Committee. For the most part, it was like kind of as boring as it sounds, but there were some interesting parts. So we want to go through the best parts of what happened in this committee yesterday when our two people, Martha and John, economists, testified and look at some of the responses. And we're going to stop the tape along the way.
We're going to yell, "Stop the tape!" And then we're going to comment on what they said. This was one of the original ideas for starting this podcast a year ago, was to do a segment like this. So we have time to go to the legislature, follow it, and most of the people listening don't. And so the point will be, you get to really see the how these people react and act at the Capitol. You get to really see the Democrat versus Republican vibe and rhetoric in the committee level. And most people don't get to see it. And I think you're going to be. I don't think you're going to be happy with what you see here today from some of these folks on the committee. But we'll roll some committee and then we'll stop the tape and we'll comment on it. Kind of Mystery Science Theater. That's an old reference for maybe
MST3K.
Okay, good. All right, good.
I'm with you.
We're not quite Mystery Science Theater because we're going to stop the tape. We're not going to have it keep rolling. Do you get the reference?
Nope.
Okay.
From Minnesota.
It is a
Fun
Minnesota
fact,
thing.
yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the vision for this. So we're going to set up this House Ways and Means Committee. So. They asked John and Martha, our two economists, to come in and give a presentation on the state budget. We write a lot about the state budget, and Martha went first and really went through charts and graphs. That's where we're a think tank. Charts and graphs, growth in HHS spending, then breaking it down, why it's growing, what started it. A lot of charts showing, before 2023 when they went off the cliff, if we'd stayed on that trajectory, but then, now on this new trajectory, really revealing, basically, here's what you guys did in the legislature to spending, and this is why we have a $5 billion deficit facing us in the next biennium.
Right. Important to note, big reason why we were called in is because they are facing a $5 billion spending deficit.
Great backdrop for the discussion. And this is the Ways and Means Committee, which ultimately puts the budget together. They'll get bills from all of the different parts of the House committees: Education Finance, HHS Finance, Judiciary Finance. They'll do their finance pieces. It all comes to Ways and Means, and Ways and Means puts together the final budget and brings that to the floor. They're a very powerful, important committee in the budgeting process. And that's the backdrop for this. This is a money committee. I'll just get a couple of things, a couple little rants before we get started. First of all, I used to work at the House years ago, and I just noticed this going back there yesterday to the Ways and Means Committee. The chairman had everybody introduce themselves. It's the first day of the committee meeting, so it's a normal thing in the first year of a biennium.
Like kindergarten?
Yeah, kindergarten, exactly. So who are you? Where are you from? Where do you represent? So everybody went around. And so one annoying thing was that these people, all Republicans and Democrats, said, "This is my second year on Ways and Means." So Ways has been shorthanded to Ways.
This is at the top of his list.
I'm sorry. It just annoys the heck out of me.
Okay,
rant two.
So
rant
funny.
two. This started a long time ago. And I'm the old.
How old are you, Bill?
I admit,
you didn't use the lingo,
the second one is something that only would bother me, but because I worked there a long time ago, and I know who this started with, and I'll just name them. Ann Lencheski was the chair of the tax committee in the House. Greg Davids was a Republican chair of the tax committee in the House, and they used to the majority would flip back and forth. So Davids would be chair for a while, then Lencheski would be chair for a while, and those two started this new tradition at the House, which has lived on and survived, and where Lencheski, if she was chair of the House Tax Committee, still referred to Greg Davids as Chair Davids because he once chaired the House Tax Committee.
That's kind of weird.
So she started saying Chair Davids, and then it was Chair Lencheski.
Like if you're governor of Minnesota or something, you hold on to the title.
And so now the new tradition at the House, and I say it's new because you can go back, and I think it started with these two. Now everybody is known by chair. So if you're in a committee, there's only one chair. That's Paul Torkelson's the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So everybody in that committee should be Representative Smith, Representative Walsh. But now if you are a chair, you say, I'm chair so-and-so because I chair another committee at another time.
No.
So that everyone is known as chair this and chair that. It drives me nuts. I don't know why.
That's
it's
genuinely
illogical.
kind of confusing. That actually does seem stupid.
So they did introductions. One of the Democrat reps introduced herself as Chair Joachim. I think it was Joachim. It's like, you're not a chair. You're not in the majority. You're not a chair.
Right.
You might have been a chair, but she introduced herself as chair. And I was just like, oh, God, here we go. So that was just a minor annoyance. We're not even getting into the clips yet. I apologize.
I'm with you on this one. That's ridiculous.
So ways.
Speaks to how highly they think of themselves sometimes, I think.
And then chair this, chair that. It drives me nuts. Yeah. So, all right. With those out of the way, we can roll our first clip. So the committee started with there's a lead Democrat on every committee. Chairman, there's the Republican, and then the lead Democrat asked for some time to speak at the beginning of the before we get started in this presentation. I would like 30 seconds. So why don't you roll that tape and we'll see him. No.
Stevenson asked for 30 seconds. I have my timer starting now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak. And I do look forward to working with you throughout this session. It appears, though, that today won't be in that spirit of collaboration. Instead, I have to express our side's disappointment that instead of starting with sort of a nonpartisan view of the state's budget or a nonpartisan view of the November forecast, we're starting out with a presentation from a group that is very much aligned with the Republican Party. And just wanted to express that disappointment, hope that we can work more collaboratively going forward, but I don't think that will.
All right, stop the tape. Okay, so
really tough.
That's his opening line. So what this is, if you study debate or rhetoric, it's an appeal to authority. We haven't even begun the presentation.
Yeah, we're like 7 minutes
slides.
in at this point.
They've just done introductions.
Right.
And before we hear from this group, I would like to just rip this group and appeal to the authority. They have no authority to be here. We don't know what they're going to say. I'm going to dismiss them already because they're aligned with the Republican Party of Minnesota, which is not true, not factually true. We are a conservative think tank. We're center right. We talk about issues, and we have a view of issues. Sometimes that's shared by Republicans. More than often than not, it's shared by Republicans. But we don't do elections. We don't do vote for this guy, vote for that guy. This is going to be a theme later, this appeal to authority. But that's where we start. Stevenson on appeal to authority.
Yeah, the fake bipartisan shtick is just so dead to me. I mean, it's just gross at this point. Like, to keep saying, we are here in the spirit of bipartisanship. No, you're not. Everyone knows you're not. Move on.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yeah, it reminds me of when Governor Walz was asked at a press conference about something we had put out, and he was like, is that the normal center of the American experiment? Well, I will dismiss them as they should be dismissed. And it's like, what?
Right. And what about what they wrote? The facts of what they wrote. Could you address that? No, we're just going to dismiss you on hand. No, the chairman, Chairman Torkelson, did a great job. We don't have time to run every little clip here, but he responded and said, I invited him here because this is a voice that hasn't been heard at the Capitol in a long time. And every voice is important, and this is a voice that they bring. And so let's just listen to them. And then he went right to our testifiers.
And keep in mind, it's a cop-out intellectually. They don't want to engage with arguments because perhaps they're not capable. Perhaps they know their arguments won't win. It's a cop-out. So if you're intellectually capable of getting on our level, having these debates with our experts, you should do that. If not, you're going to make an argument like this.
Yeah. So an hour goes by. Martha and John give great presentation on the budget, where it's going. HHS spending growth. I think I already said this. All the stuff. The state budget, taxes, what taxes would do, how they've affected the budget, migration, all of the topics. It's an hour-long presentation. I encourage you to go watch it. It's really good. So we're going to fast forward now and roll the tape of one of the first questions now they're open for questions. One of the first questions comes from Representative Jenny Klevorn from Plymouth. So go ahead and roll this tape. We're right back to appeal to authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the sake of transparency, for anyone who may be listening to this presentation, because you are speaking with authority.
Thank you.
You are the first group to come before this committee to speak about our state budget. I was looking at your 990, the latest one that's on file from November 2024.
All right, stop the tape.
That one wouldn't be on file for the record.
First of all, it's she's looking at an old 990, but wow, wait a minute, what's going on here? We're looking at 990s of groups that are coming before the legislature now.
Is that normal?
No, not normal at all. Groups come and go all the time. Nobody gets out the 990 and says, tell us everything about you. So again, we're right back to appeal to authority. She just listened to an hour-long presentation with tons of charts and graphs and data.
Yeah.
And her first question is, I'm looking at your 990 here. I'm sorry, we can keep.
Yeah,
going.
it's
right
a
to dismissing. Yeah, right to dismissing it.
And let me just say, though, this is great. I love it. Pull out the 990s.
Yeah,
pull them out. Every group that comes in, 990s on the table. I hope Republicans do the same thing.
Well, I think they're going to. That was one of the reactions I heard after the committee meeting. It's like, wow, this is something we can do now. So I think the 990s of a lot of other groups are going to be coming out because this happened yesterday, which is, we're happy to provide the service at American Experiment. Go ahead and roll the tape again. Finish your little question.
So I'm trying to figure out where the $4 million that you use for operations comes from. Could you maybe just give me a general overview of where the money of your organization comes from?
All right, stop the tape quick. Again, where does your money come from is the first question about an hour-long presentation on the budget. We could answer that. We will. I think it'll help. But our economist, John Phelan, does a darn good job answering. So go ahead and roll it. Just his answer is better than we could do.
Mr. Phelan.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's above my pay grade, unfortunately.
No, it's not.
What I would say is that this is really a presentation about the state budget, not our budget. And the second thing I'd say is that we are funded by people all over Minnesota. You know, our median donation is very, very low. And I gather that, you know, if you look at grassroots funding for certain political parties, we actually raise a lot more grassroots funding than them. So, yeah, all sorts of people all over the state is the best I can give you.
All right,
Yeah.
stop the tape.
Can I stop the tape? Do I have that power?
Yes, you can. You're the fundraiser. You tell us. He did a pretty good job of answering. You could probably fill in some
Yeah,
of those
well, he's
details.
right. Median donation, he says it's very, very low. I think he said it that way because we hadn't pulled it yet for 2024, so I went and did. It was $50. So that means out of the people that donate to our organization, it's 10,000 active donors is what we say we have right now. Over 10,000, that's in the last 18 months, number of people who have donated. All across the state, median donation $50. So we are a grassroots organization, even more so than most of the people that they hear from in this committee or in the House, right?
Absolutely. I mean, with those 10,000 donors, that's a wide fundraising base of small donations of Minnesotans. I mean, Bill Glahn on our team wrote a post about the Democratic Party the other day and where all their money came from in 2024 election. They raised millions of dollars, and $6,000 came from small donors under $100 each. That's it. Out of millions and millions of dollars, they raised $6,000. They're not a grassroots organization. Wow. And that's just one example. So we are a grassroots, widespread, broad support, and we have to earn every one of those dollars by doing content like this and asking people to donate to us every year. So
it's really incredible to think about how absurd it is that this is her second question or first question that she's asked. You bring someone onto your committee to testify on an issue that you have in part, created. We have a huge budget deficit. And her first thought is, okay, you're presenting numbers that disagree, that are, calling into question the way we've managed the state government budget. Who's paying you? Who's paying you to come in here and say these things that I disagree with? That is so insulting. That is such disrespectful behavior. I'm honestly disgusted.
all right, hold that thought. It gets worse. Roll the tape.
Thank you.
Follow up, President Klevorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two more questions, please. So I just wanted to say that of the money that comes into your organization, you also fund other organizations such as Alpha News, Horwitz Freedom Center, Minnesota Parent Alliance, Minnesota Voter Alliance, PragerU,
scary
Take
groups,
Charge,
scary groups.
Turning Point USA, and Upper Midwest Law Center.
Clutch the pearls.
Do you also please take information from those entities and work their storyboards into your presentation?
All right, stop the tape. Stop the tape. First of all, storyboards. What in the world?
What does that mean?
That's like an
Wow.
advertising term. Like we're going to storyboard our next
So,
campaign.
she's insinuating that they give us content and then we present it as our own, hiding their influence and go before the House Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah,
And-
basically we're bad, and then all these other groups bad also.
Yeah.
We're doing their bad stuff too. All bad, 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 bad. Scary names.
Like we're that guy with the board of all the stuff, and the red pins. She's like, found something.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, what an attack on personal integrity. I really can't get over this.
Yeah.
What a rude way to treat your guest. This is
Again,
absurd.
Nothing on the presentation. It reminds me of that. Wasn't there
Yeah.
a Ted Lasso press conference where some controversial thing that the coach had to do, and then all the hands are up for question. He says, "Any questions on soccer?" And all the hands come down. It's like, "Any questions on the presentation?" Nope. Anyway, roll tape. John does again a great job answering this question as well.
Mr. Phelan.
Well, we take information from all sorts of people. If you look at this presentation here, we've taken information from Minnesota Management and Budget, primarily from the Minnesota Demographer's Office and the Tax Foundation. Wherever there's good information, we'll use it. But again, I would make the point that this is a presentation about Minnesota's budget, not my organization's budget.
Great answer. Keep
it.
rolling. Keep rolling. One more question from
Thank you.
Ginny Klevorn.
Well, I took statistics in college, and I know that you can use numbers in a variety of ways. So I will just say it that way. If you have a storyboard that you want to promote,
storyboard,
you can use numbers. Almost anybody can take the exact same numbers and use them in different ways. Now, I would like to address the spending that you talk about with long-term care, Medicaid. I've just spent 6 years of my life working on aging in Minnesota. So making sure that we are caring for our elderly and making sure that persons living with disabilities also have a dignified way to live in our state. My question to you is this. The individuals are here. The individuals have multiple comorbidities. The individuals are mostly in greater Minnesota. My question to you is, with the longer distances for services, the more expensive costs in housing, the higher the utility rates go, and we cannot leave out the role of private equity in these long-term care costs and the cost of
this make
pharmaceuticals in
sense?
these
What is she talking
long-term
I'll
care
help.
costs. When you are looking at
If she ever finishes.
this growing need that we have, over 20% of our state population now is 65 or older, and that number is expected to grow. Can you please tell me exactly what do you want for the quality of life for these individuals?
All right, stop the tape. Stop the tape. All right, there's so much to unpack there. Just in no particular order.
Quality of life of these individuals.
So we're entering a new rhetorical device, which is appeal to. Shoot, I forgot the appeal. This is appeal to pity. Appeal to
Pathos.
pity. Right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Thank you. Your classical education over here. So we're not talking about numbers anymore. We're not talking about, well, what about the people? What about the children? By the way, one of the Republicans nails this in a future clip we have. But there's a lot of things she's doing here. One, you're going to hear this a couple of times in this hearing if you listen to the whole thing. Rural Minnesota, greater Minnesota, a lot of these people that need help are in greater Minnesota. Why does she say that over and over? Why do all the Democrats do that? Because the Republicans have all the seats basically in greater Minnesota. Those are their constituents.
Yep.
So she's trying to say, hey, these are your people we're talking about. Your people need all these services, not my people in Plymouth and Medicine Lake.
Which is
We're-
sick, by the way.
right.
She's saying
That's really
your
snaky.
people take up more money of our budget. Your people in greater Minnesota who have to go farther for services take up more money. Gross.
Yeah, and so that's one thing, and then so you're going to hear this appeal to pity here as we go. And again, John does a great job of answering, but I would say this is a very unfair question to two economists who just presented a bunch of data to the Ways and Means Committee. She's asking our people like. Her job. She's a legislator,
Yes.
right? She's supposed
this
to
is
decide
your
this.
job. This is your problem. It's our job to show you the numbers and show that you don't have the funds to sustain the spending that you've started. That's not my problem.
Right.
Right. And they created this situation where we
Right.
don't have the money to do the things you were talking about.
Right. You
created this
overpromised. You
situation.
overcommitted yourselves. And that's not my job to fix. It's my job to point out that it is a problem.
Yeah.
It's a very unfair question after you hear the presentation. It's like, well, what would you do? I said, well, I'm not elected. I don't have an election job. I'm an economist presenting information on the state budget. You guys are decision makers. I think we have an answer. I think John answered this one as well.
Thank you.
Roll the tape.
I'm not sure who wants to address that. Mr. Phelan.
He knows.
Yeah, I'll take that. So there's a couple of points there. The first is the argument that you can make numbers say anything you want. Of course, there's the old line, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And there's some truth in that, but I often find that is a line that's used by people who just don't like the numbers. And they
That's
want to
awesome.
dismiss numbers that they don't see. The numbers that are uncomfortable, they just want to wave them away. So that's generally, I think, the experience there. In terms of the quality of life for people and how this impacts people, I don't doubt that there are going to be impacts. And our point here is to say that you've got a problem and you need to get real about addressing it. And you can't just assume that this money is going to keep appearing from nowhere. And so that's why we have this forecast budget deficit now. That's why my colleague Martha has given you chapter and verse on how we blown the lid off this thing and how it's going to keep consuming an ever larger share of state spending and of Minnesotans' income going forwards.
Great answer. John does a great job basically saying, look, we just presented the data. You guys got to decide. All right, let's keep going. I think we've got Representative Pinto up next. Now we get into some more substantive questions, a little bit back and forth here with our guys. And these are shorter clips. So let's roll Representative Pinto from Highland in St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the testifiers. One thing I'll note, I think that part of the concern about the presentation, at least that I have, and it may have been underlying Representative Klevorn's point, is just that I don't see sources for the information in the slides. Typically, when there's economists and researchers and others presenting to us, there's some way to sort of look at what they're presenting so we can then trust the numbers because we can look at the numbers. So I guess I might just ask Mr. Chair if the testifiers could provide, I suspect that they have that information, if they can provide the sources for the slides. It would just be a request
Stop the tape.
that I make to start.
Stop the tape there. I mean, it's such a cheap shot. I looked at the presentation, like almost half the slides have sources on them. It's just data that we have all over the place. I mean, this is not rocket science. And I think the slide that's up on the screen while he's talking has a source under it. You know, so it's such a cheap shot. Oh, we don't have sources. We don't trust this information.
We'll go to the reports. I mean, we've published reports on this over and over. Yeah. They're all completely footnoted sources in there. I don't think any of these people took the time before they showed up to this hearing to really look into what was going to be presented. And so now they're like, where are the sources? Oh, in the report.
Yeah, and it's another theme you're going to hear as we go forward. I mean, things that were asked of our people that are not normally asked of other groups that come through the legislature all the time. Like, yeah, what's your source? All right, roll the tape. It gets worse. It just keeps getting worse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, similarly, you get what you pay for, right? Minnesota is a high-quality state, and what's missing from this presentation are some other numbers. Those include that Minnesota ranks 6 as a top state for business. It's the highest state in the Midwest.
What's your source?
This is from 2024. Also
Source?
in 2024, Minnesota ranks number 3 as the happiest state to live in. Again, Minnesota being the highest state
What's
in the
your
Midwest.
source?
And
Source?
in 2025, it is the second best state to retire in.
Cool.
Minnesota is. So
What's your source?
we do have higher costs,
That's
but
a
we
new one on
also
me.
have a higher standard of living and a higher quality of life here.
Okay, stop the tape. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to dismiss your whole proposal, your whole presentation, and say, here's the things you didn't talk about. We're doing great. Another theme from this whole hearing is everything's fine. We're doing great. You guys are doom and gloom. You're going to hear that later.
Yeah.
You know, oh, everything's great. And we are number 1 and number 5 and number 6 and number 2. No sources for that. And we've... Our economists have written a lot about these rankings that come from Wallet Hub and these guys trying to sell clicks. And I got to tell you, most rankings, if you dig into the details, most of them have to do with things like Minnesota does well because of healthcare. We're really healthy people, and our education scores still, even though they've dropped so much, keep us high in these rankings. But where's the source?
Yeah, and the ironic thing is they come from these sources like, CNBC or
Yes.
Wallet Hub, like you say,
First
or
one was
they're
CNBC.
looking at, the whatever. These are 2 economists who have done, all of these incredible reports on the state budget that they're trying to disregard. But we should listen to CNBC, who looked at how many miles of bike lanes
Exactly.
we had.
There you
And
go.
how
There
much
you go.
access to abortion we
Yeah,
have.
that was
always
one of
one of
them.
the number 1 weighted items in that ranking.
How does that make us a better
Yes.
state for business? They don't answer, but
Don't
it's in
ask
there.
me, but
Yes.
CNBC thought it did.
Yes, I
so
forgot
now she gets
about
to
that,
say it on her
Grace.
committee hearing.
All right, she's got another brilliant one, I think. So roll Moller number 2.
I also just wanted to piggyback on what Representative Noor said about the humans that are behind these numbers. I
There
have
we
a
go.
constituent, David. I had a great conversation with him in a coffee shop last week. He is also a journalist. He has a child that has Down syndrome and autism. And one of the articles he wrote recently said this: Medicaid home and community-based service waivers, programs designed to provide alternatives to placing Medicaid-eligible people in hospitals, nursing facilities, or intermediate care facilities. These programs allow people like my son as a minor and eventually as an adult to live at home
Okay,
or
get the
independently
violins out.
rather
Yeah.
than being
This is
institutionalized. It saves
appeal
the
to pity.
state money. A National Kaiser Family Foundation study found, for example, that HCBS users cost about $36,000 compared to institutionalization around $47,000.
No one disagrees.
He also says for disabled adults, direct service professionals make it possible for many to live in their own homes, work, move about the community,
Programs should be
live
funded,
full
but
lives.
you got a
It means
problem. You got a
parents
budget
can choose
problem.
to
Right.
stay home and care for their disabled kids, or that we can
No
work
one
and
disputes
afford to
this.
hire aides to provide the support
Certainly
they
our
need,
economists didn't.
but only if budgets keep up with the costs.
So there you go again. Appeal to pity. It's about the children. We're going to get a great answer from Representative Nash later. But before that, we have Chair Yochim, because she made sure to say that. So I think she's next up on our list of...
I don't understand the thought process here at all. Like, you have an issue. You've called an economist to talk about your state budget, why there's, again, gotta say it every time, a $5 billion projected deficit. Why are you talking about the things that need to be funded? Like, there are so many things that our state needs to fund. And your government is doing a terrible job of coming up with the money because you're spending on things that don't matter.
Yes.
So, yeah, these things that do matter are not going to get funded. This is your job to figure it out. I don't understand why they're posing this question to our economists.
It's the first day. It's like the first day of school. It's their first chance. No, it's
They got to
not
get
the
all their
first day.
thoughts out. Is that
By the
what
way,
this
it's not
is?
the first day. Let's just stop the tape. The first day was January 14th.
Yeah, sorry, it's-
These guys didn't show up, so
February 10th this was?
they've been sitting in the basement drinking coffee for 2 or
The
3 weeks.
bipartisan bars came out this
yes.
week. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, wow, there they are.
Yeah,
Oh.
so this is their first chance to come to the legislature, so they're all fired up. All right, roll the next one there, Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have more of comments. My questions on the charts can be done offline, especially with Ms. Adrian's,
Charts.
because
I
the
feel
charts
like
aren't
this is for
really
the quiz.
set up
This
the
is
way
so
we
funny.
usually look at them.
Okay,
And I have
stop.
some questions.
Are we stopping right here? Yeah, stop the tape.
so
all right.
funny.
That's just a little thing, but these charts aren't set up the way we usually do them.
Yeah.
So I think that they're probably not accurate. The numbers are probably bad because they're not in the format that we usually do them here. Maybe you don't understand that being at the think tank.
Yeah.
That's just so arrogant. It's so ridiculous. Like, my brain can't compute charts done a different way. So it's a way to
Yeah.
dismiss the presentation because the charts aren't done the way we usually do them.
Yeah.
I'm nitpicking here, but that just bothers me.
No, you're either unable to comprehend information when it's presented to you in a format that you're not used to. You're either that, or you're insinuating that we're doing something wrong, or trying to be sneaky with
Yes,
our
we're
numbers.
hiding
We're
something.
hiding our numbers in a format again you're not used to. Either of those options is not good.
We need the lady who took statistics, I think, in
Yes,
high school. Can
yes,
we
to
bring
help.
her back? Maybe
Correct.
she'll understand the way we do our charts.
Here's another one from the same representative.
And then also just a comment too about education. I appreciated that Mr. Phelan talked about the need to be productive in our economy. I take a little offense because words matter, that the inference was that teachers are less productive or unproductive.
Oh boy! Stop the tape. Okay, there's a couple things going on here. First of all, John, you got to watch the whole thing. But John was trying to explain a economic theory about certain segments of our economy are productive. They produce things, products, widgets, computers, microphones, tables, and then
Like
certain,
GDP,
yeah, and then certain are in the
GDP,
service
okay.
section, like teachers. They don't. Their productivity is limited because we can put 30 kids in front of them. They can teach them, but there's a limit to their productivity just naturally. It's not a shot at teachers to talk about their economic output as a limited productivity. It was but there's a collective self-esteem of teachers in Minnesota from the union that we can't harm them or disparage them in any way. For her to hear that and think that he was disparaging teachers is insane. It's just insanity, but I recognized it right away. Well, collective self-esteem of teachers. I didn't like that teachers aren't productive. No one said teachers aren't productive.
Yeah, we're talking about the budget. Just because they aren't productive as far as the GDP goes doesn't mean they're not helpful to society in a million other ways. No one would dispute that.
These little snide comments. So we're going nitpicking, but it's kind of fun. All right, let's bring in the heavy guns now. You're tired of hearing Democrats. Representative Nash just nails the appeal to pity here. It's a lesson for everyone to watch.
I wanted to respond to a couple of comments that related to numbers. And nobody loves a good logical fallacy more than I do, being a longtime competitive debater. And the appeal is, the logical fallacy is an appeal to pity. And the notion of saying this is about people is true. And that this is going to cause an impact for people. That is true. And the looming $5.1 billion deficit was created by an approach of not looking at restraint, not looking at how to make sure that this is long-term viable. So don't try to create traction for your point of view by throwing out a logical fallacy saying, well, it's about the children, or saying it's about the seniors.
Awesome.
So good.
You had the opportunity to consider that when you wrote these different budgets.
Yes.
And you blew through an $18 billion surplus, and then you came up with another $10 billion in taxes. And now, when that bill is coming due, and we're going to have to figure out how do we get out of this, then you raise your hand and say, well, it's about the children, it's about the people, it's about the insert thing here. Using a logical fallacy to make a point in a committee where we have to deal with dollars and cents is a really
exactly
poor
it.
form of argumentation. And it's also assuming that the people on this side of the table don't care about those things, when in reality we do. We just now have to fix the problem that we've been given that has risen over the last 6
Ouch.
years of spending.
Okay, that was outstanding. I mean,
So
we were
good.
we were stealing some of his stuff earlier in this piece, but couldn't say it any better than him. It came at the right time in the committee meeting. You know, it's like, stop saying it's about the children. We all know that. All right, now we're going to head to Minneapolis with Representative Alicia Gomez, or should I call her Chair Gomez, because she used to chair the tax committee, which she'll remind us of that, I think, in some of her comments. So I've got a few clips from Gomez, Minneapolis.
I was chair of a couple things in my college days. Maybe if you guys wanted to start calling me Chair Kathryn. I'm
Okay.
Just
Get right on
thinking,
that.
Yeah,
All right, Chair
maybe I'll
Kathryn.
test that out.
All right, sounds good. All right, roll the tape. Gomez.
You know, just like to take one example, right? First, or what is it? The second page, general fund spending per capita. Well, we literally have an entire report called The Price of Government that tracks spending as a per capita as a percentage of GDP, which is like the actual way to track it over time. And what you will see, if you look at the Price of Government study, which you should all look at, is that over time, as a percentage of GDP, our investment in the public good, our government spending has been going down and down and down.
What?
And particularly, you know, on something like education.
Spending's going
It's
down.
like in 2000, we've never gotten back to the level to restore the Phelan cuts of 2002.
There it is.
It's the same in local government aid. It's the same in county
Phelan
program
cuts.
aid. Last year we got back to the 2002 numbers. And what's happened to the cost of everything since then? So it's all well and good for us to sit up here and say, oh, we don't believe in raising taxes. We don't believe in raising taxes. Well, what about our local government partners who have to keep the lights on, have to keep the roads paved, have to keep the schools
much
open?
here.
They don't have the choice to do that. So what have we seen? We've seen over and over that as the state investment as a percentage of GDP per capita, the price of government has gone down.
Price of government.
Those costs get passed on.
And there's
They get
nothing they can
passed
do.
on in the form of property tax levies mostly.
Couldn't be helped. All right.
That's my favorite
There's so
argument,
much-
by the way.
yeah.
If we don't raise taxes, the roads aren't going to get paved.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, they're funding, go look at any of our golden turkey things. They're funding the most insane, like, you know, condoms in Gaza or whatever.
There's-
Like, you know, that's federally, but.
Again, it's a long clip, so much to unpack here. But first of all, the shot at Pawlenty is just laughable. I think I laughed out loud when she said it, because Tim Pawlenty was governor. 2003, we had a real budget deficit after 9/11, and the economy collapsed, and Pawlenty did some cuts. Here we are. We're 20 years later, more than 20 years later, right? You know, it's like we're still talking about the Pawlenty cuts. I mean, it's a joke. It's like, holy cow. So that's just ridiculous. Secondly, price of government. Now, we don't have time to do price of government here, but it would be a good show for you guys if you wanted to bring one of the economists in and talk about why the price of government is a ridiculous indicator of the price of government.
Sure.
It's this weird, what's the income, average income for families, for an individual, and then totaling state and local spending total and what the percentage is. And shockingly, as she points out, price of government's actually gone down. So it was put in place by Arnie Carlson in the 90s. It was pretty close to a good indicator in the 90s, but it has been completely warped. And I'm not smart enough to explain why, but if you brought in Martha or John, they could tell you. But one of the main reasons is that it doesn't just count income. It uses a definition of income that includes transfer payments from government. So as Aisha Gomez put more money in entitlement programs and welfare programs and healthcare programs, and that becomes income to people. It's a tail chasing its dog. And so we never catch it, and it's not a good indicator because government grows and income grows with government growing. And so it never reaches that part. So nobody with any brains at all thinks the price of government is a good way to use to look at the budget. She's trying to say, like you said, gaslighting. She's trying to say spending is actually down according to the price of government.
Like, that's a bold strategy. All these polls are showing that Minnesotans think their taxes are too high and should be cut. And she's like, actually, the price of government's going down.
So when you ever hear price of government, put your radar up, and maybe that's a future show, but maybe not, because it could be really boring. All right, next we have a couple of these from Gomez. Let's run another one.
I guess first of all, it's like what I heard was a lot of there's a lot of doom and gloom coming from you guys, man. A lot of Minnesota carnage, a real dark vision of where we are. I mean, the truth is that this is a good state. This is a good place to live. We have a very diverse economy in Minnesota. We have a lot going for us, and all we ever hear from this group is just how awful everything is, and how we're the corporate franchise rate being second highest in the country is gonna
Fact.
doom us. And it's there are things that are important to people.
Wait for it.
and things that influence people's decisions about where to live and how to live. And the corporate franchise rate's probably not among them. It's more like, how are the schools?
All right, stop the tape. More like the schools? Okay, come on, really? The schools are what she's pointing to? Has she not been reading our stuff? Clearly
Half
she's
of our
not been
kids
reading our
can't
stuff.
read.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead. I thought you guys.
I don't know.
Yeah, you guys know this. I mean, half our kids can't read or do math at grade level, and she thinks that we're gonna promote the schools. There is some doom and gloom in Minnesota.
Well, she pulls out this one thing like corporate franchise rate or whatever. Now, the point is that everything in Minnesota is overtaxed, and it's forcing people out of our state. It's forcing businesses out of our state. And our mission here is to make Minnesota a better and more prosperous state for everyone, because we love Minnesota. Because I love living here, but it's expensive to live here. It's hard to live here. And many of my friends have left for Florida or Texas. I've now got, nephews down in Texas who I'm dying to see. They're not going to live here. They're not going to live in Minnesota. It was too dang expensive. They make good money. They said, we're getting the heck out of here, and they moved to Texas. It's sad. And that's why people like us care about Minnesota, because we love Minnesota. Have you been up north? It's like incredible. It's beautiful. There are great things about the people here. We really are nice. Yet, people like her try and drive people out of this state because they can't afford it. They want people who are dependent on government only, and not people who are productive, want to start their own companies, make their own money. Those people leave.
It's also like, so again, I just keep going back to the word insulting, because not only are people leaving because it's unaffordable, it's hard to live here, cost of living is high, but then you turn around and you look at all the news coming out about the fraud and waste in Minnesota state government. So it's like, okay, not only am I paying more in taxes to live here, not only is my cost of living high, but you're throwing my money away on not only, golden turkey projects, but you're also just giving it to people through fraud and waste. It's absurd and so insulting.
Right. Well said. Yeah. I mean, fraud didn't even come up. There's a whole other committee meeting working on fraud, but that's a whole other topic. All right, let's keep moving here. We're running out of time. This is a short one, and I'm nitpicking here again, but this is kind of snide little comments that they throw in that we're going to expose here.
And so, in this conversation where we put economic indicators, we sort of skew the data a little bit to reflect our fundamental belief about the world, which we could all do.
Value. Okay.
Wow.
Stop the tape.
Whew.
Skew the numbers. That's an accusation. What
Yes, it
number
is.
has been skewed,
Yeah.
Representative Gomez? Can you tell us one chart, one data point that was inaccurate? No.
Nope.
But you're going to make that charge anyway and say that we're skewing the numbers to make it seem like it was like our message. I reject that. Mm-hmm. All right, we can do the next one too. Next one's short too, but this one I'll set it up. Sorry, I'll set it up. This is just indicative of the sort of view of government from the other side, from the Democrat side versus the Republican side. This is a prevalent view of government from the party that she represents. I think she articulates it here.
And we've talked about it here. What do taxes buy? Like, taxes aren't just like a number on a page. They buy things for people.
Stop the tape. Taxes buy things for people. That sums it up. I mean, that's what she believes government is for. We're supposed to confiscate tax revenue from those that can pay and buy things for people with the tax revenue. That's insane.
And that she should decide where your money goes and where it's going to be best used. That's the fundamental difference. That the taxes should increase so that she can decide,
Right.
not the person who earned the money.
Right.
buy things for people. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that one out there. All right, we're going to wrap it up now. Back to Stevenson for the big wrap up. He did a lot of stuff here in his speech. We won't play his whole speech, but he talks about, the Trump budget cuts and Congress is going to cut budgets. And he makes this big speech about how that's not in the forecast and we're going to get hammered by because the federal government's going to cut spending. By the way, Martha had a slide in her presentation about a concern about the federal government cutting Medicaid and what that would mean for Minnesota. She's aware that this could happen. And as an economist, put that in there and said this is, and the point is we have to be able to ready to react. And we might have to change some of the things we do to react to it. So that was mostly of his speech, but then he has a little nugget at the end here we can roll.
I would note that the Star Tribune actually had an article today about migration trends.
Credible
that
source.
Substantially kind of contradicts the story that we heard from the testifiers today. The most recent numbers from 2024 did show a net domestic migration loss, but only about 1,000 people left Minnesota. Contrast that with natural growth of 12,000 and international migration of 30,000.
All right.
Now, I think we can all agree that Minnesota has workforce challenges.
Yeah. Here we go. I mean, first of all, Star Tribune's a good source for this
I'm glad
committee,
we're listening to them.
but the presentation from the budget documents and all these other data points, not a good source. But second of all, the point here is that everything's fine. We're relying on international immigration to fuel our economy. That's just a fundamental disagreement in the state right now. We should be concerned about that and what's happening there. But he's not. He thinks it's great.
Yeah, and this is like kind of the point I was trying to make. The people that are coming in are relying on government, and that's causing the budget to grow. So it's like a fundamental issue, but he's saying, no, this is a great thing.
Yep. Looking at the numbers and not realizing which groups are coming in, which groups are leaving, and which income categories are leaving, which income categories are coming in. And we're just trying to point that out, but apparently we're the bad guys. All right, final comment from the chair. He goes back just kind of to the beginning and addresses some of this appeal to authority and talks about kind of having respect for the people that come in front of the committee to testify. And Chairman Torkelson does, I think, a good job of defending our two economists, and a little humor, I think, at the end, too. So roll Torque.
Today, I would encourage members not to disparage the presenters. That's not really acceptable. If you have questions about their resources, that's fine, but questioning their motives by questioning their resources is not appropriate.
Thank you.
Finally, did you have something to say?
I did not impugn motives.
Oh, okay.
I
would like to thank the presenters. Thank you for coming in today, and we do appreciate the information you brought forward.
All right, stop the tape. So he's making a good point. He's making the point we made earlier. That's like, just you can talk about where they get their money, but don't. What's your point? You're trying to impugn motives by attacking their source of revenue.
Yeah.
And he just kind of says at the end, let's not do this, as I'm chair of the committee, and she has to get her little last jab in. I didn't impugn motives. Well, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
You also weren't the only person who spoke on this, so I'm not sure why she felt the need to jump in. I noticed the other guy stayed quiet. He was talking about, we talk with Alpha News and UMLC.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just so
Thoughts on the
absurd.
board?
This is also like the second time in 7 days that we've been called on to testify and have been, I feel like, pretty unfairly attacked in these ways. And it just, to me, it comes across as bullying. It seems like they don't want us to come and testify before them. And I don't think it'll work. I assume,
No, we're not going
keep
away.
coming back, but
I do kind of love the energy, great. Like, I hope Republicans bring the same energy when the, Democrat nonprofits
Isaiah?
come in. Yeah, when they come forward and they say, well, we've got this data and it's totally nonpartisan. In the past, people have taken these things to be true from these nonprofits that get most of their money from the government and therefore have some kind of, they're biased, clearly. I hope Republicans pull out the 990s, and I hope they ask really tough questions, and they're not afraid to laugh in those people's faces like the Democrats did here.
Yeah, and I hope people liked our first segment of Stop the Tape. I think there's going to be a lot of material going forward. We'll do floor sessions and break apart some speeches. You won't believe what's going on at the Capitol in these committee hearings, and we'll try to grab it and put it in front of you in this format as we go on.
Yeah, it's helpful because if you actually try and watch these things, it's like paint drawing. It's so they
bad.
talk so slow if you watch them live too. I get it. They're thinking that this is all happening. I don't blame them for that, but watching it is horrible. You have to watch it later. And pro tip, you can 2 times speed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to. So don't watch them live. It's so painful. But then Stop the Tape, I think, is a great way to address that problem we have.
Yep, we'll do it again.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us this week. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, help us reach more people, and we will see you next week.